People love to talk about success like it's this big mysterious formula, luck, talent, timing. But let me tell you something, it's not luck. It's not a lottery ticket. Success is built one habit at a time. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits. If you build weak habits, you'll have weak results. If you build strong habits, you'll create unstoppable momentum. And that's what we're talking about today, how the small choices you repeat daily determine the life you live tomorrow. Think about this for a moment. Every single day, you're doing things almost without thinking, brushing your teeth, checking your phone, grabbing your coffee, driving the same route to work. Those little repeated actions don't seem like much, but here's the truth. They're building the person you are becoming. Habits don't just determine your schedule. Habits determine your character, your reputation, and ultimately your destiny. See, most people think habits are just about getting results. Work out so you can lose weight, study hard so you can pass the exam, wake up early so you can have more time. And yes, those results matter. But what's even more powerful is that your habits are carving out your identity every single day. You don't just go to the gym to get fit. You become a person who values health. You don't just read books to pass a test. You become someone who hungers for knowledge. You don't just pray or meditate or journal for a quick sense of peace. You become someone whose foundation is grounded in discipline and clarity. What you do repeatedly rewires your brain and rewires your future. The problem is, many people underestimate this. They think it's just one skipped workout, it's just one missed deadline, it's just one bad choice. But here's the problem, one bad habit repeated enough times becomes an identity you never intended to live out. The reality is, your life is moving in the direction of your strongest habits, whether good or bad. If your strongest habit is procrastination, your life will be filled with missed opportunities. If your strongest habit is distraction, your life will be filled with unfinished potential. If your strongest habit is complaining, your life will be filled with bitterness. But if your strongest habit is perseverance, your life will be filled with breakthroughs. If your strongest habit is gratitude, your life will be filled with joy. If your strongest habit is courage, your life will be filled with victories. This is why it's not enough to set goals. Goals are great, but goals are outcomes. Habits are systems. A goal says, I want to be successful. A habit says, I will show up every single day and put in the work. A goal says, I want to write a book. A habit says, I will write 500 words every single morning no matter how I feel. And over time, those habits harden into who you are. That's why people who only set goals but never create habits feel constantly stuck, constantly guilty, constantly wondering why success always feels out of reach. It's not the goals, it's the systems. You see, the person who smokes every day eventually says, I'm a smoker. The person who runs every morning eventually says, I'm a runner. Identity always follows habit. You want to change your life, change what you repeat. That's the formula. And what's even more fascinating is this, when you shift your habits, you start to believe different things about yourself. That belief is what sustains long-term change. When you break a cycle of laziness and replace it with discipline, you stop seeing yourself as someone who is always late, always unprepared, always falling behind. You start to see yourself as reliable, capable, and worthy of respect. And people around you will begin to treat you based on the identity your habits project. Now, let's not sugarcoat this. Building the right habits isn't easy. It requires intention. It requires sacrifice. It requires saying no to what feels good now so you can say yes to what matters later. But the alternative is far more dangerous. Because if you don't control your habits will control you. And they won't just control your schedule, they'll control who you are and how people remember you. So here's the challenge. Stop asking, what do I want to achieve? Start asking, who do I want to become? Then reverse engineer the habits of that kind of person. Because you can't claim you want to be healthy and still live off junk food. You can't claim you want to be successful and still binge hours of mindless entertainment. You can't claim you want to lead and still avoid responsibility. Your daily habits are the receipts of who you really are. When all is said and done, it won't be your intentions that define your life, it will be your habits. We live in a world that loves to glorify motivation. Everywhere you look, there's a new motivational quote, a new inspiring video, or some emotional hype speech telling you to chase your dreams. And don't get me wrong, motivation feels good. It can give you a spark, but motivation is like a sugar rush. It spikes, it feels amazing for a moment, and then it fades away. You cannot build a life on sugar highs. If you rely on motivation to succeed, you'll be inconsistent, you'll be emotional, and you'll end up frustrated. What carries you through is not motivation, it's discipline. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. Motivation says, I'll do it when I feel inspired. Discipline says, I'll do it because it needs to be done. Motivation is emotional, discipline is logical. Motivation is fragile, discipline is unbreakable. And here's the truth, every person you admire, every person you consider successful, did not get there because they woke up motivated every day. They got there because they trained themselves in discipline. Think about an athlete. Do you think the best athletes in the world wake up every single morning dying to go train? No. Half the time, they probably feel tired, sore, and worn out. But they show up anyway, because discipline doesn't consult feelings, it follows commitment. The same goes for entrepreneurs, leaders, parents, students, anybody who is building something worthwhile. Discipline is the bridge between desire and achievement. Without it, you'll live stuck in the land of good intentions. With it, you'll cross over into results. The problem is, many people confuse discipline with restriction. They think discipline means being miserable, being rigid, or cutting all joy out of life. That's not discipline. Discipline is freedom. Discipline gives you control over your future instead of letting circumstances control you. If you discipline your money, you'll have financial freedom. If you discipline your body, you'll have health freedom. If you discipline your mind, you'll have clarity. But when you reject discipline, you hand your life over to chaos, and chaos never produces freedom, it produces regret. Let me put it this way, motivation is about how you feel today, discipline is about who you want to become tomorrow. That's why successful people prioritize discipline over motivation every single time. They know that feelings change, but habits don't lie. They know that you can't trust your emotions, but you can trust the process. They know that consistency beats intensity. Anybody can get fired up for one day, 1 week, maybe even a month. But disciplined people show up day after day, year after year, and that's why they win. Some of you are waiting for the perfect time, the perfect wave of inspiration, the perfect feeling before you start, and that's exactly why you're not moving forward. The truth is, action creates motivation, not the other way around. You don't feel motivated to work out until you've already done it. You don't feel motivated to study until you've already cracked open the book. You don't feel motivated to take on that challenge until you've already taken the first step. Stop waiting for feelings to lead the way. Let discipline lead, and motivation will eventually follow. But here's the catch, discipline is not built overnight. It's built through repetition, through training, through accountability. And yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. Your brain is wired to seek comfort, to conserve energy, to avoid resistance. Discipline asks you to go against that. It asks you to delay gratification, to choose the harder right over the easier wrong, to sacrifice now for something greater later. That's why so few people develop it, and that's also why so few people ever reach their full potential. The people who do, though, the ones who build discipline into their lives, become unstoppable. They don't need to wait for external hype because they've built internal strength. They don't quit when it's hard because they've trained themselves to keep going. They don't waste years of their lives waiting for lightning to strike because they've already decided that discipline will be their fuel, and that fuel never runs out. At the end of the day, motivation may start the engine, but discipline drives the car. One of the biggest misconceptions about success is that it happens all at once in some big, dramatic moment. We see someone get a promotion, launch a company, win an award, and we assume that was the defining breakthrough. What we don't see are the hundreds, sometimes thousands, of small wins stacked quietly behind that moment. Success is not a single giant leap. It's a long collection of small, consistent steps that compound over time. The reason so many people never achieve their potential is because they underestimate the power of the small wins. Think about it like compound interest. If you invest a small amount of money consistently, it doesn't look like much at first. But over time, it multiplies into something massive. Habits work the exact same way. One workout won't change your body. One study session won't make you an expert. One networking conversation won't transform your career. But repeated over time, they stack, they build, they multiply, and eventually they create momentum so strong it feels unstoppable. The problem is, people get frustrated with the slowness of progress. We live in a culture that wants everything now, instant gratification, instant results, instant recognition. And when people don't see dramatic change right away, they quit. They say, "This isn't working." But here's the truth. It is working, you just haven't given it enough time. The gym membership is working, even if you can't see results after a week. The discipline budget is working, even if your bank account hasn't exploded yet. The daily grind is working, even if no one is applauding you. Small wins are invisible at first, but invisible progress is still progress. And here's where most people miss it. Those small wins don't just build external results, they build internal belief. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even if it's small, you prove that you are trustworthy to yourself. You said you'd wake up early, and you did. You said you'd read for 10 minutes, and you did. You said you'd show up, and you did. That is confidence. That is momentum. Success is not just built in the big moments of glory, it's built in the quiet moments of consistency. Now, don't misunderstand this. Small wins are not about lowering your standards. They're about creating traction. Too many people paralyze themselves by aiming for perfection right away. They think, if I can't do it all, I won't do anything. And that's why they stay stuck. Small wins break through that paralysis. They give you something to build on, because here's what happens. One small win leads to another, and then another. You eat one healthy meal, suddenly you feel better. You go for one walk, suddenly you want to go further. You finish one project, suddenly you have energy for the next one. Momentum is addictive. Think about the people who dominate in any area of life. Athletes, business leaders, creators. They didn't start by winning the championship, closing the billion-dollar deal, or publishing the bestseller. They started by showing up daily, stacking those wins until their work compounded into something extraordinary. And the truth is, that's available to everyone. Not just the ultra-talented, not just the lucky few, but anyone willing to play the long game of small wins. The key is to stop despising the small beginnings. That little action that feels insignificant today is actually the foundation of something massive tomorrow. And the reverse is also true. Neglecting the small things eventually compounds into failure. Skipping the workout today doesn't ruin your health, but doing it consistently will. Overspending once doesn't break your finances, but repeating it does. Cutting corners on one assignment won't end your career, but making it a habit will. Small decisions matter because they compound, either for you or against you. What's so powerful about this principle is that it puts success back in your hands. You don't have to wait for a lucky break, or some huge opportunity, or someone else's permission. You can create momentum starting today with small wins. You can stack one victory on top of another until one day, people look at you and call you an overnight success. But you'll know the truth, it wasn't overnight at all. It was daily discipline, small wins multiplied into big victories. And in the end, success isn't built in the extraordinary things you do once in a while. It's built in the ordinary things you do every single day. We've talked about how habits shape your identity, how discipline carries you further than motivation, and how small wins compound into big victories. But let's be honest, none of that will matter if you keep holding on to bad habits that are quietly sabotaging your progress. Because the truth is, bad habits don't just slow you down, they eventually break you. Every bad habit comes with a price tag. You might not see it right away, but it's there. Maybe it's the habit of procrastination. You keep putting things off, telling yourself you'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week becomes next month, and before you know it, years of your life have been wasted waiting for the perfect time. Maybe it's the habit of comparison. You scroll endlessly on social media, measuring yourself against people who don't even know you exist. Slowly, it eats away at your confidence, your joy, your ability to focus on your own path. Maybe it's the habit of negative self-talk, where every time you try to step out, you're the first one to tell yourself you can't do it. That voice becomes louder than any opportunity in front of you. Bad habits don't announce themselves with alarms and warning signs. They creep in quietly. They feel comfortable, even harmless at first. One late night here, one excuse there, one compromise at a time. But over time, they form chains you don't even realize you're wearing until you try to move forward and suddenly feel stuck. And the longer you let them grow, the harder they are to break. That's why the best time to confront a bad habit is now, before it gets stronger, before it roots itself deeper into your identity. Here's what makes bad habits so dangerous: they often feel easier than the good ones. It's easier to stay in bed than to get up early. It's easier to spend money than to save it. It's easier to complain than to take action. And because they're easier, we rationalize them. We convince ourselves that it's no big deal. But the easier path in the short term almost always becomes the harder path in the long term. And the harder path now, the discipline, the sacrifice, the self-control, almost always becomes the freer path later. The good news is, bad habits are not destiny. Just because you've repeated something doesn't mean you're trapped in it forever. But breaking them requires brutal honesty. You can't overcome what you won't admit. You have to call it out for what it is. If you waste hours every night watching meaningless content, stop sugarcoating it as relaxing. If you avoid responsibilities until the last minute, stop labeling it as working under pressure. If you let fear and negativity dominate your thinking, stop pretending that's just being realistic. Honesty is the first step toward freedom. Once you've admitted it, you replace it. You don't just stop a bad habit, you build a better one in its place. If you stop scrolling, start reading. If you stop procrastinating, start scheduling. If you stop tearing yourself down, start speaking words of courage and belief over your life. Breaking bad habits is not just about subtraction, it's about replacement. You're reprogramming your mind, your routines, your patterns to create a different identity. And let me tell you, it's not going to happen overnight. Just like building good habits, breaking bad ones takes time. You're going to stumble. You're going to slip back into old patterns sometimes. But the difference between people who stay stuck and people who break through is that the breakthrough people refuse to quit. They don't confuse failure with finality. They dust themselves off, they reset, and they keep fighting because they know the fight is worth it. Imagine the cost of not breaking those bad habits. Imagine where your life will be 5 years from now if you don't change. The opportunities you'll miss, the relationships you'll damage, the health you'll lose, the dreams that will die, all because of habits that you refuse to confront. And then imagine the opposite. Imagine the freedom you'll have if you break them. Imagine the strength, the clarity, the success, the impact. That is the choice in front of you. So don't wait for the perfect day. Don't wait for more inspiration. Don't wait until you've got it all figured out. Start breaking them now. Even if it's messy, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it feels small. Because if you don't break your bad habits, one day they will break you.